Today's guest is somebody I have been genuinely excited to talk to for a while. So Salomé Sibonex is an artist, writer, and a thinker who doesn't really fit into any political or cultural box perfectly, but that's kind of exactly what makes her so special. Like, I followed her on X for a really long time, and her and her husband are both based AF. Um, she's known for her unapologetic takes, very honest, and she says the quiet part out loud. So I'm really excited. She said she was excited to be on the show to rant with me, which means that without a doubt, this is going to be a real and unfiltered, in the best way, conversation. And I'm excited to do this one. So let's get right into it. So, mate,
Hello.
what's up? Thank you for being here. You're awesome. I appreciate you being here. I guess,
Thank you. I'm so excited.
yeah. So introduce yourself. Tell people what you are, what you is.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I do a lot of cultural commentary. I run a publication on Substack called The Black Sheep that's dedicated to individualist philosophy and the concept of listening to the unpopular but well reasoned takes. I was really early to criticize like woke leftism pre 2020 and then push back on COVID, pandemic, authoritarianism. That was kind of like where I got my start in the political discourse. And as that's developed, I've just kind of found myself like perpetually politically homeless, which I think we should all be because ultimately, like, as individualists, I believe in living by principle and by values and a huge critic of tribalism, which I think is a growing problem now. And anything else? Do the podcast circuit and do a lot of writing. So that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. So, I've kind of read some of your work. I know that I think like I read this article on I think it was like against Zionism, which was really
Yeah.
solid. That was like
Thank
a
you.
really good one.
That
But
was a troublemaking moment for sure. That was, like, my final getting kicked out of the right as it is now. So, yeah, so I've been fully, like, canceled by the left, canceled by the right now. So, now I'm just free. Just free.
I love that for you. But you came from like really like the cult of the woke left, right? And
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of the things that they wholeheartedly believe stem from feelings and how you feel, right?
Mhm.
And I guess like kind of explain how you broke that circuit, because that's really hard to do. Obviously the media doesn't help anybody break free of that. And it really does take independent thinking, truly independent thinking, to branch off from that stuff. So I'm curious how you escaped that absolute hellhole.
Yeah, so that's a great question because leaving the left kind of became a passé thing, but I think it's more relevant now because I'm seeing the same problems that ultimately push me away from the left on the right, namely things like tribalism and collectivism and just letting ideologies do your thinking for you. So, when I was a leftist, I was radicalized by Tumblr. That was my ultimate beginning of finding this ideology.
Never
And what
heard that
I've
before.
no way! You're joking. You gotta be sarcastic.
Tumblr? No, yeah, never.
No way!
No,
Oh, that's like a huge thing, like,
I
a
know what
lot of
Tumblr is. I just don't
yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
like that was
yeah.
like a huge like cesspool of wokeism.
Oh my god, it was crazy. It was like one of the it was like the beginning of cancel culture happened there, like, it was one of the early social medias that all of these, like, nasty impulses were birthed on, and then, of
Mhm.
course, like, migrated to Twitter and became more mainstream and all these things. But, yeah, so I was there in the early days. I was seeing people get canceled before anybody called it getting canceled, and so as, like I think I was, like I must have been like I want to say 18 or something. And it was just this environment where it seemed like there was no other option for anything except to be a leftist. If you wanted to publish your work, you wanted to publish writing, you wanted to be like in public on social media, you were either assumed as a leftist or you were vocally a leftist. There was just no space for anybody that had differing viewpoints. And I just think that they also weren't on Tumblr. So it was just like a very leftist monoculture echo chamber place. And so that really was kind of like my radicalization. I was in this bubble and I was young, I was impressionable, and I was afraid of like these dog pilings that I would constantly witness. And I didn't know anything about politics either. And so it was like, well, here is this ideology that's speaking to the problems that I see in the world: poverty, injustice, suffering,
All the
inequality.
microaggressions.
Exactly, like, that was the new thing. It's like we have microaggressions to worry about now, cultural appropriation, I remember when that became a thing, and it felt like this was the thing that you kind of just believe if you're a good person who cares about the world. And so, ultimately, it was a few years, I think, before I started to see the really devious roots in that, and it was originally, like, one of my waking up moments was having a friend tell me that my grandmother, who grew up in communist Cuba and was very poor, like had to go across the country to try to smuggle garlic so that she could make a nice meal for her family, was not allowed to learn how to read by her parents, like lived on a farm, all of this like really just rough upbringing. She was actually privileged, my friend informed me, because she was lighter skinned. And some people are darker skinned in Cuba. So, on the hierarchy of privilege, she actually didn't have it so bad. And that was one of the first moments that I was like, if this is the mindset that you have, where your impulse is to rank suffering and to do it by skin color in this way, what is the reward even for this? Like, why do you need to let me know that my grandmother who suffered through all of these things is still kind of privileged though? That was the first like nail in the coffin for me where I was like, I think people believe this for bad reasons. Like, I think there are some bad motives behind this ideology. And so that eventually like just became more and more apparent to me. And I remember, I think it was around like the BLM movement that I kind of just like reached my limit, because there was the collective pressure to perform allegiance to that movement with posting the black square. And that was kind of like my intense line in the sand, because there's something for me about like being pushed to conform and being coerced in that way that just like irks me so deeply. Like, there's something about my makeup that's like, that is the thing that awakens the beast in me. Like, I have very little tolerance for that. And so that's really when I started speaking out against things like in a much more public and aggressive and consistent way. And I kind of realized, oh, this is how things change. And that led me ultimately to the concept of the black sheep, where I realized like there are these moments throughout time where some people realize something earlier than the group is ready to recognize. And very often, like if those people are too early to the thing, it doesn't matter and it actually goes really poorly for them. But later on, the herd, the wider populace, the time is right for them to hear the message, and like things start to shift at that time. And so I realized there's like a lot of virtue in being honest very early, because that's actually the catalyst for the cultural change. That is like a very important role that a person can play. Like, if you have that awareness of like, wait, something's wrong here. Where is this going? I don't think this is going in the right direction. Like, if you have that instinct earlier than the general public does, very often, like, that's the canary in the coal mine role. And so I started to see that more and more. And like, you had that in COVID where there was early questioning of these lockdowns and like the vaccine mandates and the requiring you to carry a vaccine proof card if you're going to into public and things like that. And it was one of those things that if you questioned it too early, you were dogpiled, you were treated like a pariah, you were treated like you were crazy. And then eventually it just came around to like, well, yeah, or actually that was always what we thought. And it was never that big of a deal to question that. And so I've seen that pattern play out again and again. And the thing that I'm seeing now that really reminds me a lot of my time as a leftist is just like allegiance to ideology above principle, value, and one of those values is truth.
I'm
That is
so glad you
something that
said
you can
that.
have
Yeah.
allegiance to. Right, and it's like we've really lost as a culture the ability to have more of a rational discourse around things, and it's in my opinion largely because of social media. And I'm not a fan of gatekeeping. I'm not a fan of like elite institutions and things like that. But the reality is that when everybody is in the conversation in the way that social media creates it, we really fall to like the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator is not a person who has that kind of rational discussion about, well, I see where you're coming from, but here are the issues with that. A lot of what we see now is just like this tribal signaling and slogans and like drawing lines where it's like, oh, if you have that belief, you're that team. I see all the time, like people will do this to Dave Smith, right? Like Dave Smith is actually a leftist because he has these criticisms. And it's like, people can have different viewpoints and not fall into these one or two of two camps. Like it's absurd to think that all human beings will only fall into one of two political camps. And of course that really is just like part of why I outgrew leftism, not just becoming a reactionary where I'm like, well, then I'm going to run to the right instead of the left and be just as overzealous and harsh and dogmatic in my opposition to leftism now as a right wing person. Rather, it was like, what is actually wrong with leftism? It's not
They have
just
hella
that it's
way
leftism.
of just making virtue signaling trendy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
so much
yeah.
better at it than the right is, and that's
Yeah,
why,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
they just kick the right's ass at the culture war. Honestly, that's what it
It's
is.
crazy. Yeah, no, 100%, and this is the thing is, like, people who are leftist generally, like, are more emotion driven, and they tend to function in that, like, of the psychological terms like openness. They're more open. They tend to think of things more in terms of like vibes. And it really is a thing. Like there is a vibes war. Like politics is vibes. And I think you can see that a lot in like the social media accounts that the current administration is using. Like it's probably the first time I've ever seen in my life a right-wing political movement like take vibes seriously and use them in a way, like try to have this kind of aesthetic emotional um quality to the ideology and not just have it entirely be like the idea and the slogans and whatever. Of course I think that's terrible though, because like ultimately your politics and your beliefs should be built off of reason, not just vibes. You can layer vibes on top of what is true and good, but it shouldn't be vibes first and then I choose what I believe based on what
Well,
vibes I want to enjoy.
me and my wife have said this for a long time, and more recently, like I've seen it like on social media a lot more. Like James Lindsay started talking
Mm.
about it, and I'm like I hit or miss on James Lindsay. He's spaced in some spots. He's just like, "What are you saying, dude?" When it comes to like Israel and stuff. But
Mhm.
like um, it really has become like a woke right. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
literally so woke in their own way, and I'm glad that you said that. Like it's so wild because the current administration, they are trying to like weaponize social media, make it like
Mhm.
super edgy, and that obviously helped them a lot with the last election.
Mhm.
Like that he went on the podcast circuit, and
Mhm.
I think if they didn't do the podcast circuit, Donald Trump would have got like smoked in the last election,
Mm,
truthfully. I just think he was, like, getting obliterated. Um,
mm.
but, and it's not so much like an Overton window thing, but culturally on social media especially, I do think that, at least on social media, the right, it just kinda, like, moved. I think Elon Musk had a lot to do with that, with how he, like, favored certain things in algorithm to fight
Sure,
against,
yeah.
Facebook, and how they were doing the opposite during Biden.
Mhm.
Um, but, I don't know, man. I always tell, my Republican friends that they're woke, and they get really pissed off. So
Man, yeah, so the thing that is really interesting is, like, everybody wants to do woke things when it's in their favor.
Uh-huh.
Everybody wants to be a collectivist for their collective. Everybody wants to do identity politics for their personal identity group and cry victimhood when it's them that's going to gain the benefits of it. I mean, like, I just can't believe the amount of like attention I've seen on anti-Semitism awareness, anti-Semitism hate speech, anti-Semitism expanding the definition of it. And to me, this is just the same thing that we saw during the previous administration and before that, where like everything was white supremacy. And the definition of that was like, are you on time a lot? That's actually a form of white supremacy. And so now it's like, do you criticize the government of Israel? That's actually a form of anti Semitism. Like, wait
Insane.
a minute. We
Yeah.
can't just call everything that we don't like a form of bigotry. And in a way, it's kind of demoralizing to be part of this political moment. Honestly, like, I have found it particularly difficult as someone who very much went through that woke era, pushed back on it, saw people push back on it successfully, saw that movement actually move forward. They lost. Identity politics on the left like fell away. It fell out of favor, only for some of the same exact people to turn around and start to do the exact same thing with Zionism. And then, of course, like in that, I think in that essay, or if not somewhere else in one of my husband Jake's essays, we've warned people that if you do, it's the same thing I told the left. I would tell people all the time, if you do identity politics, other people get to do them too. So if you tell people that as a white man or as a
They don't like
man
to
or
hear
as a
that.
whatever, no, I found out that many times. If you tell people that they have this like intrinsic quality because of who their identity group is, and that society should be structured around which identity group needs to be privileged because they were once underprivileged and needs to be protected, and if you criticize them it's actually oppressive, and if you do that and try to take that shortcut, other people are going to do it too, because why wouldn't they? It would be stupid not to. And so, of course, then you saw the rise of white identity politics, which I just was like, of course. Like, of course, that's going to happen next, because one, that was already building as a backlash to leftist identity politics, where it was like everything is white supremacy and white people are bad. So, of course, some people are like, well, then I'm going to do that actually,
It's
because
just
that's
the
just a
law of
very normal
inertia.
human. Exactly. 100%. And then you had the right start to do it, where it was like, well, we're going to shut you up by calling you an anti Semite if you criticize this foreign policy, if you criticize this government official, if you criticize this ideology. Well, then some people are like, actually, I don't care if you think I'm an anti Semite. I'm going to do it because fuck you. And so we get into this place, which is in some ways very human, where everybody does their identity politics. And it's just like we're regressing. It feels very much like we're regressing and becoming more entrenched in our different identity groups. And so I've just kind of like, it feels like we ran so fast away from the woke leftism only to like fall in a ditch and just be like, oh, we're here again in a new way. And so that's kind of inspired a lot of my disdain for like national politics and this current political moment, because it feels very short-sighted. As someone who did the whole thing, I was a leftist, I figured out what was wrong with it, I left it, I opposed it, I criticized it, I promoted things that were better, treating people as individuals, free speech, all of these things, only to have like so many of the people that were alongside me in that then just kind of be like, peace, now I'm going to do what they did but for my team, and I'm going to call you a problem. it's just like, well, one, I'm kind of bitter about that. And two, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you did not learn the lessons from watching the left fail using those tactics. And that's
It's almost
ultimately
like
like,
criticizing Israel is almost like a microaggression to them.
oh,
You
100%.
know?
I think I've even seen that. I think I've even seen that argument. And if not, it's definitely a macroaggression. So, I mean, I have watched people just kind of like ping pong back and forth between extremes in this way. I really think that people are underestimating the backlash that can come from the left now, because once you run in the other direction of the left and just become like a right-wing authoritarian, well, you've kind of given them credibility. Like, a lot of these people who are like, they were talking about fascism for like the last 20 years. And it was like, dude, come on, like, don't be, get real. Like, we're fine, okay. And now they're like, this is my moment. Like, now I'm starting to see these bills trying to target students who wrote an op-ed criticizing Israel. Now we're starting to see these actions by the administration that really do feel deeply authoritarian in some sense. Now, of course, I warned those people against authoritarianism too, and they didn't take that warning. So they're now reaping what they've sown. I just don't want to see any more reaping and sowing. I would like us to start to actually advance. But if you don't figure out the principle that underlies the problems, then they just keep repeating. And that's ultimately like, I think, really the different path that I took from some people who like left the left and did that whole thing, is that it wasn't for me that, oh, leftism is the problem, I just need to be right wing and then that's, I can do no wrong. It's that leftism holds beliefs that are in contradiction to principles and values that create a good society. And you can still oppose those principles and values while being on the right. You can oppose them while being up, down, all around, because they transcend particular ideologies. Free speech is not just something that, oh, if you're right wing, you believe it no matter what. I mean, we've clearly seen that already. So that's kind of like, I'm in a position now where I've had people tell me repeatedly that principles are very nice and all, but not right now. Not for us. Not for this.
And
It's
this is
like,
why
that's
I
not how they
named the
work.
this is why I named the show "Speaking Uncomfortable Truths" because I knew you'd kick ass at this because you've been there. You know what I mean? Uh, because I don't know. It's like they on both sides they see certain truths as aggression. They just literally
Yeah.
see honesty as aggression. Mm. So I
Mm,
don't know. Like, why do you think that they do that? Like, obviously, like it's a lot of emotion that takes them to this point, but
yeah.
I love to blame the corporate media for feeding the fire. I love to blame public schools for ingraining
Mm,
woke Marxism into our children's brains from a young age.
yeah.
Um, you know, but I don't even know, man. Like it could be maybe the parents, but like social media, I think plays probably a bigger role than anything right now. But so X is supposedly a free speech platform, but I've seen plenty of people get knocked on there. I've seen people
Yeah.
get banned for criticizing Israel, and
Yeah.
it's kind of wild. But it's not like they're saying anything that's not true. This is all like stuff
Right.
that's like cut and dry. You can't make it up. Like we just saw a dude get murdered in the streets in
Yeah.
Minneapolis. But
Right.
it was justified. Like, you're
Yeah.
acting like
Yeah.
we didn't just see this from 8 different camera angles, the same thing.
Right.
How do you feel about that whole situation that just went down, actually?
I'm really not not optimistic about what is going on with that. I think that the handling of immigration via ICE is incredibly suspicious. So, like, something that I have not seen anybody talk about is the fact that ICE didn't exist until 2003. ICE was a agency that was created in response to 9/11, and a lot of very bad things were created by the government in response to 9/11,
Patriot
famously the
Acts,
Patriot Act. Yeah, lots of
NDAA by
things.
Obama.
Yeah.
where they can
Mhm.
just hold you
Yeah.
indefinitely with no
Mhm.
trial. Like, this is
Lots
a
of problems
thing.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm really suspicious of the, like, passionate defense of a government agency that is, like, barely a few decades old and was created in the aftermath of 9/11, which was famously, like, an opportunity for, like, a mass expansion of government security state, type of policies, and, the other thing that really I've seen nobody contend with this is the fact that, like, ICE was originally created in that scenario because the idea was that if we had an agency that was dedicated to dealing with like immigration infractions, like overstayed visas and things like that, we could have prevented potentially 9/11 because some of the people involved had immigration violations that perhaps could have been caught if there was an agency that was dedicated to. So we have this pretense of stopping foreign terrorism. And we have this reality of federal agents walking through American communities and getting into altercations with American citizens. And so there's a lot of complexity there that I grant, but as a libertarian, like broadly, I think it's important to always be suspicious of any security agency that is started in the aftermath of a terrorist attack with the pretense that it is going to stop foreign terrorism that then starts getting into altercations with American citizens. I understand the criticisms that people say that, like, oh, but they're starting trouble, they're out there and being crazy. Absolutely, sure, that's a fine criticism. Nonetheless, we have an agency that is killing American citizens in these altercations. And it's a lot more serious than I think people grant because we have gotten to a point where political tribalism means that you kind of fuse with the political party when they're in power and are motivated to
Kinda like
justify them.
they give them qualified immunity.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
They
Yeah,
give, like,
yeah, benefit of
if
the
my
doubt.
boss, if my president is in office, you know what I mean, the guy I voted for, it's
Right.
fine if he messes up some it's fine if, like, some bad things happen, like, Democrats are so quick to, like, you know, cover up
Yeah.
all the wrongs of Joe Biden, like the auto pen stuff, how he was
Mhm.
completely not mentally there at the
Yeah.
end. But Republicans have done it. They did it the first time Trump was in office, and they're doing it again with this. And I just, like,
I
I feel like
mean,
it's the
it's
same people.
crazy.
It's literally the same people. Like, if you showed people
Yeah,
that video 9 years ago, they would have said that was murder. But now they're like, it's all good. And then like,
yeah,
you talk about agencies that come out of, problems. We just left COVID. We just
yeah,
left, like, this thing, and now, like, Trump is, like, intertwining, AI with Palantir, and I feel like this whole situation with ICE and, rounding up illegals, um, I feel like it's kind of a test run. Like like,
yeah,
that's all I could think of. I might be a little
yeah.
conspiratorial, I got aliens on my wall, but, like, you know, it just feels like
The
this
question
is
needs
just
to
the
be
start.
asked.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, and this is, I think, ultimately the difference between, like, liberty-minded people and partisans, is that I am inherently always fundamentally going to be skeptical of the government and demand that the government hold itself accountable and be held to a higher standard than I'm going to citizens, period. I don't care if they're having beliefs that I find, like, horrible and that I disagree with. The reality is that the way we get divided and conquered is exactly by turning people against each other and saying, look at these terrible progressives. They just want to cause destruction and chaos. And that's why we need to have federal agents on every corner. And that's why we need to have a database of who is acting crazy and who is going to threaten those agents who are just trying to do their job. And that is why the agents have to be given full immunity and not have scrutiny, and we can apologize for any of these things because if you give an inch they'll take a mile, and it just becomes this slippery slope scenario where the target, like this scapegoat of, here's this person you hate, just give us a little more power and we're going to use it against them. And then in our short-sighted nature, especially when we're like this highly tribalized political moment, people are really driven by this sense of, I want retribution. And it is something that I remember warning leftists about. I was like, y'all are going to get it real bad because I'm watching these people and they're fucking pissed. There are so many people on the right who feel so aggrieved, taken advantage of, gaslit, genuinely oppressed, especially during like things like COVID, like that they've been given this like super raw deal and then disrespected constantly on top of it. Those people are bitter. And they're still bitter. And like they'll tell you, you can get into these exchanges where people will tell you, I don't care. All I want is to crush the left. Like that's all they want. It's like, well, I don't know how many different ancient traditions of theory and philosophy I could bring up all day to explain why that instinct for retribution above all ultimately is self-destructive. You may get what you want in crushing the left, but you'll find that you've crushed everything else and that, oh, now there's nothing left for me either. And so this is why you see probably a lot, like more and more now, my writing just focuses on like principle and values and the concept of virtue because it's a form of navigation through life that is not as fickle and as dependent on the external world. If you care about truth, then that is always what that is. Truth is always truth. The importance of truth does not change based on which administration is in power or what somebody else is doing or saying if you truly believe in truth as a virtue, as something that always provides a certain kind of value to your life and to the world. And so for me, I really have seen that failure in the left to think I'm just going to have this short-term strategy for life where I'm going to try to censor my enemies, I'm going to lie about them, I'm going to get as much government power as I can to quash them and to control them, and somehow this will never come around on me. And of course, now we are here in this moment, and I'm already seeing a lot of people on the left like just completely miss the fact that this is like a backlash to the previous administration and to a
It
lot
goes
of like
right over
the
their head. It's
100%.
crazy.
Just no recognition of the fact. Like, the people will tell you, like, they will say it when, like, blatantly, openly that they want retribution against the left, that they are doing this because of what the left did, and now they have to, like, overcorrect for it. Like, they'll say it. And, but people don't want to let go of, like, this fight. And I think that's ultimately why politics can be this really degrading force and why we were talking a little bit about the Free State Project, and part of why I'm very into that idea is that I ultimately think like it's fine to argue about politics, but you have to be able to live a good life. And if you're not living a good life, being a person that is worth being around, that is like a positive force in your community, in the people around you, for your partner, for your children, for your neighbors, all these things. Like if you're bitter, full of resentment, and you're arguing with people constantly in this like unproductive way and wishing harm on people constantly, like you're not living a good life. Like that is just like the baseline. And you know, it's funny because people on the right, like really, I'm getting called woke now. I get called a communist now. Like, so it's just hilarious to me because I'm like, for many of these people, I was opposing woke stuff at like a higher price before they were probably even aware of what was going on because I was so early to that. And now I'm getting called like a woke communist, feminist, like whatever, like all the stereotypes, like haired lib, whatever.
Yeah, I get it from
Because
both
I'm like,
sides. I get like people will be like, "Oh, you're
yeah,
anti-Semitic."
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but then they'll also call me like a Zionist, and then they'll call me a Jew in the next breath, and I'm like,
That's so
"What
funny.
the heck?" Like this is just how the social media is now. But
Yeah,
um
welcome to having principles. Like
yeah, I
nobody,
guess.
everybody hates you at a different time because you're always inconvenient to someone who's trying to get away with something.
Yeah, I think like the trendiness factor of the virtue signaling,
Mm.
It obviously it all comes down to kind of like more of like a conformity. They want you to like conform to like this is the norm for what we do, right? And if you speak outside of those norms, then you're not one of us, and that's why we get
Yeah.
insulted. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that like there's at least for a while, maybe it's shifting and changing now. That conformity for the left, a lot of that I think genuinely was fear based. Like I feel like
Mhm.
um they were genuinely worried about these things and they'd get all emotional, right? And the same virtue signaling during that same stretch of time that was going on with the right, because it really never, like, it always was there. But for the right, I think instead of fear based, it was more comfort based because they're more
Mm.
like, in terms of like, family values and tradition and all this stuff. And this is like what I want to preserve, right? Because it's conservative. Um, But what I've noticed now is after all the hell we've been through, especially after COVID and all that grudge that they're holding inside against the left, um, I think it's turning more fear based, and I think that
Yeah.
that's I don't know. I feel like it's very weaponized against people, obviously, especially when it gets to this level. Um, the police have always been over militarized and
Mm.
it's really crazy. It's I don't know. They're
Yeah.
trying to scare people. They're trying to scare the left.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think they're doing a good job, honestly. Like, I think, like, people are, pretty riled up on the left, which, of course, for me, it's just like I don't know how you feel about this. I'd be curious for your thoughts, and again, this is kind of why I'm, like, checking out of national politics. It just feels like a kind of like Dante's Inferno, where you're just stuck on this level of hell forever, and you just have to watch the worst politics cycle back and forth forever. But I really think that, um the right is I'm not sure if it's some kind of death throes moment because of course we're still so early into this administration even though in some ways it feels so long. Um I feel like in some ways they may think that they're losing control and I think there's a buyer's remorse. I definitely know like as I voted for Trump, which is like very surprising to the people who now think that I'm a woke communist or whatever. But I voted for Trump because I was like, fuck it.
you voted for a socialist?
Yeah, yeah, right? I came full circle. I voted for Trump. It was a very, like I was like, I'm not sure," but then I went ahead and did it at the last minute. And I very much am a person that feels like that buyer's remorse. I'm like, I voted because of a lot of campaign promises that I thought if this comes to pass, this would really be historic and beneficial. And I got the opposite in many of those cases. I mean,
You
like
got
things like
FDR
no
too.
new wars. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's nice. So I think the left should be actually really happy because in some ways they're very much getting what they would want. They just don't like the face on it.
yeah. How can you
But
praise FDR and then look at Trump and be like, this guy is our worst enemy? Like
right,
he's
like
doing everything you've always loved.
honestly, I know there's so many things I'm like, "You should be happy about this."
If
Like,
only you
this
would
is very much in your
conform.
book. Yeah, we're just stuck in that cycle. And so I think that there is like it's hard to describe, but when people don't want to think they made a wrong decision. It's very uncomfortable for us as human beings, particularly when our identity is invested in something. I see myself as a such and such voter. I see myself as such and such political group to recant and say, this is not what I thought it would be. And I'm not happy with this. And nonetheless, I had supported this and I'm not happy with how it's gone. I've actually flipped that in my life. I have very much found that those are wonderful opportunities that you can just like run full ahead into. So for me, it's like the minute I'm like, maybe I was wrong about this. Maybe it's not this way. For me, that's a window. That was what inspired my essay on Zionism because what was funny about that is like I originally was a Zionist. I mean, I was not very knowledgeable. I was not very passionate. I was not a Zionist for a very long time. I didn't even know what the hell that was until October 7th, I really just never was aware of that ideology and what was going on there besides like, "Oh, that's terrible. I hope they work it out. That
Yeah.
sucks."
And now you
So,
start
you know,
seeing
'cause
all, like, the APAC tracker and,
now
like,
I know everything.
how
Yeah. Now
intertwined
I'm
they are with American
now I'm
politics.
deeply aware of it.
Too aware.
Um, yeah, way too aware as a fucking American of what the hell is going on in other countries, in my opinion. But, I remember my first instinct was like, "Well, why can't they have their own country? I mean, shouldn't they be able to protect their country?" I mean, like and also, I mean, it really is kind of dangerous to have, a populace who hates you so much right next to you. I mean, maybe they really should do something about it. So I just immediately kind of fell into these very normal assumptions about that conflict. And of course Jake is very my husband Jake Klein is very knowledgeable about that subject and has
He
like
lived in Israel, right?
grown up. He's visited Israel. He hasn't
Visited, okay.
lived in Israel, but
Yes.
yeah, he's visited. And he grew up in Zionist communities and all of that. And so he's very, very familiar with the ideology and the problems with it. And so like he just kind of like talked me through it and was like, well, but what about this? But what about that? And da 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 da. And I was just like, oh shit, yeah, this is just identity politics all over again. This is just like another form of collectivism. And so I was able to kind of like use my principles to realize like, oh, this is a very different conflict and scenario and culture and like all these things are different, but they have these key buckets that the things ultimately fall into, like collectivism, like identity politics, like the infringement on property rights, the infringement of individual rights, and things that I hold very dear. And so, reasoning from principles, I ultimately came to that position. And it was like once I had that doubt, it was like, well, here's the opening. Like this is where something new is going to happen for me, some kind of transformation, some kind of change that will be important to develop my perspective. That is not what most people do because that's very uncomfortable because for most of us, we've already entrenched ourselves into a camp. I was kind of unique in that situation because I was barely a Zionist. So I didn't have a lot to like hold on to. But for most of us, we don't want to change our minds. And
It's
so I
okay to
think
be
there are a
wrong.
lot of
Like,
it's awesome to be wrong. It's actually awesome to be wrong if you know how to do it. Like it's on I believe it is a kind of skill to know how to deal with I think I might be wrong about something, but this is an opportunity for me to have a more accurate worldview by digging into this and then building out a better worldview that's correct instead of wrong. But most people don't do that. And so I think we're seeing that kind of like buyer's remorse among the right, which what happens for a lot of people is they become more extreme. So there's a wonderful Jung quote that I can't remember perfectly, but the idea is that a fanatic is a sign of someone that has a repressed doubt. So the more overzealous the person is, more likely they have some doubt about that thing that they're overzealous about. And so I see this like real intensity on the right. In some ways, different from the left. Because a lot of the people that were on the left that I knew of and that I would see, they're kind of they didn't know a lot of what they were talking about. You know, they wanted to be good people and they were wrong about their ideas and but they were not as angry and they were not always as like energetic about it. Like they kind of just like, oh, you know, it was like kind of this like feminine, like I want to be a good person. I'm gonna bully you a little bit. I'm like, no, 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 you know, this kind of thing. There was of course like the hardened activists and those people. But I see a lot more on the right of people who like are fully in. It is their everything. Like they are really intolerant of any questioning of the ideology that they're holding. That it's gotten to a strange place too, and like people have commented on this. And but I do think that there's like an almost cultish energy to it, which of course
yeah, I mean,
we
how
were
many people,
calling the
like,
left a cult
actually,
for a while too.
hold a lot of these views? Like, how many Democrats
Yeah.
actually want men to be able to use women's restrooms, and
Right.
how many of them have daughters? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Right.
like, like, I don't know. It's really easy to just like agree with words online or whatever you see, or just look at the corporate media who just I don't know. They've proven at this point to everybody like they have record low
Yeah.
trust with the entire country. Um, but somehow, I don't know. People like especially the boomers, they just eat that shit up.
Yeah,
I
that's a
not to,
problem.
like, talk badly on my father. My father got this text
Same.
message the other day, and he texted it to me, you know, about, like, some, like, Somalian in, Nebraska that killed someone at a gas station, and he was like,
Mm.
"They're taking over the world," and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, "Do you know there's not that many Somalians in America, actually," and,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like, I was like, he's watching way too much Fox News because, like, for the next 4 days after that, that's the only story they're gonna get, and it's gonna
Yep.
hype them up, get them really emotional about it, and not then they're gonna wanna deport all the Somalians, and, this is
Yeah.
where we are in
Yeah, yeah, and
Minneapolis,
then you
so
justify whatever in the effort to do that. And so I mean, this ability to manufacture outrage and discontent and controversy that the media has is just like really underappreciated by the right now as it affects people on the right. Because of course we were happy to criticize it on the left and be like, oh, look how they radicalize them and whatever. But not us. Not it doesn't happen to us. Like we truly see through all this unless you're a Zionist or you're not a Zionist, because then those people are definitely getting radicalized. Like that is it's so funny. Like it's just like it's why I can't stand so much of the political discourse anymore, because it's just like the flips happen on the minute. It's like these
it's
people are
happening
getting
a lot more on the
radicalized,
right too,
not
like, you
me.
saw a lot of the, like, the right-wing podcast influencers were literally getting $7,000 lump sum payments to promote Israel's agenda, which is
And what are we supposed
absolutely
to do with
insane.
that? I'm not supposed to question now, like people in the
If
media
you're in
and like
Florida,
whether they're
by
getting
the way,
paid.
that's illegal now in Florida, like, they banned
Yeah,
anti-Semitism at the state level there, which, by the way, like, I was there on vacation a couple weeks ago.
so
I
crazy.
made sure I got a couple jabs in. Nobody
Yeah, yeah.
called on me, but,
You didn't get it taken away yet.
no. F
Yeah, do it early.
Netanyahu, freaking loser.
That's so crazy, and, like, it's such a bummer because Florida in so many ways is, like, a more libertarian state in some sense, like, they're not they tend to be a little better, like, no property tax and, like, a few things like that that they get right that on average other states, can be conservative leaning and, like, just don't get those, like, easy low-hanging fruit things right to just, like, let people be free, but that is just, like, another thing that I'm like, why are we doing this again? Why have we not learned the lesson
Well, when it comes to
that you're
libertarian,
ultimately
it's
gonna create a
like
backlash?
libertarians are such like a big tent, obviously. You hear that all the
Yeah.
time. Um, but like libertarianism, I don't know. Like I'm here in New Hampshire for the Free State Project. Um, but I think that there's a misconception that libertarianism I don't think it's a nation building ideology. I think it's like that's
Mhm.
actually antithetical to libertarianism in a lot of ways. I think where libertarianism thrives is it promotes things like agorism. That's the
Right.
real strength of the Free State Project because you get here and a lot of people are like just have their own separate community. Like free
Right.
staters, they can literally do they can survive if the government collapses tomorrow. Like if there was an EMP, we have a big community. We know where people
That's
live.
so
Like we have like a
cool.
group. We would be fine here. Like without the nation. No
That's
other state can
awesome.
say that. And no other group of people in any state can say that. We have thousands and thousands of people who moved here and they're all part of this group. And we can call on them and we can all like bond together if something did happen, even if we did disagree.
Yeah.
Um, that's the strength of libertarianism is creating stuff like that. It's not
Mm.
political victories. Like props to anyone who like gets
Mm.
elected to their city council or as mayor, federal elections. It's a wash. Libertarians shouldn't even try. But I digress. I'm going to get in trouble because I'm on the Libertarian National Committee and they're going to get pissed at me for saying that. But yeah, like libertarianism thrives locally, but more so like in ways where you can just use these awesome this
Mm.
the best philosophy in the world to just create something new, create alternative systems. That's what it's all about.
You
So
preach into the choir. I mean,
I
I
know.
just feel like more and more we're getting wrapped up into national politics, which I think is insane because that's one, just like such a mentally unhealthy thing to focus on is politics on the national level, because it is one of the least movable things that you can focus on. And on top of that, you have people that are worried about what is going on in states that they don't even live in. So that's already an unnecessary burden that you're putting on yourself. And we're not designed to do that as human beings. Like, I'm not designed to keep up with what is going on with the entire country and be in this constant political conflict with the entire country. It's a miserable way to live.
I really think that, um, like you everyone has their strengths, right? And this is something I really wanted to touch on. Everyone has their strengths in this like movement, right? Because we're all individuals. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and that's like the worst part about a lot of this woke stuff is like they try to put everyone on this equal level,
Mm.
and they try to like give everyone the same benefit, the same privileges of everything. But like, no, the truth is like some people are better than others at things. And those people who are really good at certain stuff, like certain parts of life, they should focus on that and do it to their best of their ability. And libertarians should be doing that because that's their best contribution to liberty, is whatever they're good at. That doesn't mean running for politics most of the time. It doesn't mean running for your county treasurer position for your local Libertarian Party affiliate most of the time. Um, what are you good at? Go do it. I have so much respect for you and for Jake. You guys do a lot, and you focus on your strengths. You're a really good artist, and you're a fantastic writer and a really good speaker. And that's what you do. Your strength is not everyone else's strength, though. And I'm not even saying my strength is necessarily podcasting. I love to hold conversations. That's why I'm here. But I have my own strengths that I try to focus on too. And uh, I guess you know that's kind of where we're at. Is like we just need to consider where we're at. We need to be an adult, and I think that real maturity is stepping back and saying, like, okay, like I've been working so hard to get to this thing. It's like kind of like a sunken cost fallacy. That you're never going to be able to be the best at, but you're already like really good at something else and you don't focus on that. So, it's like the old saying, if you can't be the best climber, be the best swimmer. You know what I mean? So,
I've
um,
never heard that saying, but I respect that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, like, you're preaching to the choir, because I don't know how we haven't reached a moment, like, as a collective, as Americans, where we're just like, "This is not working. This does not seem like it's working, guys. Maybe we should start doing the troubleshooting part of this and figure out the safety exit out,
mm,
because what are we just gonna keep, like, ratcheting it up?" And I mean, I have friends that are not even that political, and they're not, like, doing political commentary or anything, but it's so hard to escape the fact that the cultural milieu that we're in has become national politics, which is just insane, because in my view, that's the opposite of what the founders of this country wanted. When we talk about, like, the idea of going and doing things with people who are similar minded in your local area, very much reminds me of the whole reason why we have states to begin with. Because the whole idea was, go do your thing over there with your people, and then let federal government run in the background for the major things that cannot be managed at the state level. I mean, the 10th Amendment is just routinely disrespected, and I think everybody needs to appreciate why we had a 10th Amendment had, because that shit is not being respected at all anymore. But the whole point is just like, as human beings, we're not meant to be in this kind of like national politics drama. And for me, my background is actually in psychology, And it really informs a lot of the way that I view politics, because I don't view politics solely from the lens of politics, but rather from the lens of psychology. And some of the most unhealthy people you will ever meet are obsessed with politics and doing politics in the least productive ways, which is just constantly fighting forever with other people.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really just like a red flag of like, is that the kind of life a person should live? Like, is that really what it means to live a good life? Um, and comparing that to your description of the free state, where you can be living among people who have similar values and who actually exist as a community, which is so funny because you hear leftists talk all the time about community. But they really don't do a lot in terms of building that on a local level, except for maybe like some anarcho-communist types who really take it all that way. Otherwise, it's kind of just like we have to control national politics and turn the whole country into our community that's inclusive and taken care of by the government, which is just like an insane delusion that, of course, leads to forever conflict with the mass number of people who are like, I don't want that. I'm not doing that. And so then you just get this like perpetual conflict that keeps fueling itself. And so I really resonate with that idea of just like stepping back in some sense. But I wonder how much, in some ways, that's just like the most traditional way to live, is to actually just like live a normal human life among people who are similar minded in your community and focus on having that community and building it. And we've gotten so entertained to death by the way social media has turned politics into this kind of like reality show, catastrophic drama, where it feels like if you don't participate in that, if you're not commenting on it, if you're not involved in it in some way, that you're just like not really a person.
It's
You're just
literally like
kind of like,
kind of Plato's cave-ish, like me and you, we've left the
yeah.
cave, but the rest of them, they only see like what's in front of them, and they don't realize
What's on
even
the
that it's an
screen?
act.
Mm.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
um,
I mean, that's the thing, like, I don't even think I'd be curious what your opinion on this is. I don't even think I'm gonna vote anymore, because that's kind of like my coming to consciousness about, like, what the hell am I even doing here? Like, what is even the point of this? I gave it my best shot. I previously would vote for libertarian candidates because, like, have my vote, whatever, enjoy, doesn't matter, but sure.
oh yeah,
Um,
here's your
take it.
1%.
Yeah, yeah. Here you go. Happy to put a penny in the bucket of that. But I just feel like, even that is kind of like in some way invests you into this drama and this like weird fantasy that like, maybe something will happen and da, 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 and takes away from the gravity of like we really should be trying to build communities of like-minded people and just like avoid the drama and the distraction and the conflict of like trying to adjudicate everything on the national politics level.
I mean, well, overall, like, I feel like I've heard a lot of I'm an anarchist. I feel like a lot of anarchists have tried to make the argument of voting in self-defense, and I think that's a little
Mm,
silly. Um, but then I've
that's
also,
interesting.
like, I'm kinda like you. Most of my voting career, I voted for libertarians. Sometimes I just never voted at all.
Right.
Um, but the people that you put your name beside, those are like people that you're saying that you want to represent you. But like
Right.
truthfully, nobody can represent you but you. And
Mhm.
that's really like the root of all of it. So I actually think, from this point out, I'm right there with you. No more voting. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm kind of out. Like that's that's the theme of this an interview. It's just like I'm out, and it's just like it's such a bummer because like I am personally like very drawn in many ways because I don't like to see perpetual conflict, and like I have a real sentimental and affinity for like a lot of the early founders ideas on things. I really think it's very genuinely enlightened to have come up with these ideas like private property rights and individual rights and like the idea of a small government that's restricted and designed to serve the people and not be a giver of rights to the people. Like I think that's like based shit, you know, and I think people really don't like appreciate the idea of sovereignty. And we've just gotten so far away from those roots of like American ideals that in some sense should be governing everything, which is like, okay, like let's get back down to the very basics here. Like, do we have sovereignty? Do we have private property rights? Do we have ways to negotiate the conflicts between that are civilized and functional and just? And it's just gotten like so tribal, and you know, so it's like that's a lot of what I have been doing with the Black Sheep. My work on that publication is just like trying to create kind of like an online space for people who feel exactly like that. Like, I'm out. This is not what I'm about. Like, at my core, I do not want to see more human suffering. I don't want to contribute to human suffering. Like, I believe in the sovereignty of the individual. I believe in defending my sovereignty. And I believe in like the human capacity to reason, to interact in a civilized way. And in some ways I think it's really, I don't know if I'm a alarmist in this, because of course everybody thinks that the time that they're living through is uniquely bad, and you can just look at history to know that that's really not even true for us right now. Like, and as much as there's so much that I'm would be like, let me make the list of all the things that are terrible and catastrophic right now.
I've studied a lot of eschatology. I don't know if you know what eschatology is. Uh,
Hmm.
it's basically it's the study of the end times.
Oh,
A lot of
okay.
like the Book of Revelation, stuff
That's
like
so
this, right?
fun. Wow, that's so
And like
interesting.
all through history, people were 100% sure that like this is it.
It's so funny to me. That's so us.
It's so true. Like this is just a thing. Now I'm over here like looking
Yeah,
as like, man, like
right.
Elon Musk is over here doing some stuff that, I could see this turning pretty bad for everybody here pretty soon. And it's really easy to get doom and gloom. But
Yeah.
like I try to keep things super, I'm white pilled as a person.
Mm,
Obviously like what we want to see in the world, one, only a very small amount of people are going to be willing to accept it. First of all. Two, that means that it's not possible on a national scale. And three, what that leaves us with is that we can get it as individuals, we can have it in our community. Likely not at a state
right.
level, but this is why we preach on individualism and decentralization all the time. Bringing things as close to home as possible. What
Yeah.
we want to see in the world way more likely to happen in a small community. That's why I love the Free State Project. So you should move here.
You are so selling me. Like, it's so crazy because
Good.
I'm all obviously, like, I love the idea anyway, all just on my own previously, but, just more and more, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the thing you have to do. Like, there's just no other way to deal with life as it is. Like, I mean, that's just the ideal, is to have a community and pursue those values on the individual level where it's actually real, as opposed to trying to like scream into the void and like fix a whole country or whatever. Like, that's just, and you know, the thing is, like, the proof is in the pudding. Then I really believe that people who live, the proof is in the way that you live. And there's actually, like, I forget what Stoic philosopher it is that says exactly that. Like, yeah, I can't remember if it's Aurelius or someone else, but the idea is like, let your life be the proof of your philosophy. And for so many people, you know, it's like, sure, you can be watching their podcast every day and hearing their hot takes, and they have a million followers and whatever, but like, how is their life? Like, do they live a good life? Do they spend time with their family? Are they a supportive member of their community? Like, are they a good friend? Are they a good spouse? Like, these things that really kind of like matter on the fundamental level of like what it means to be a good human being. And of course, like, this is also very central to Western civilization. Like, this is our heritage, as like Western civilization is to care about these kind of like deep philosophical ideas. And I find that that just gets like completely lost in the chaos of like national politics drama and just political tribalism, of course, because that brings out the most primitive side of us. And I've been thinking more and more about how much, like, when you look at the local level, you find so much beauty and innovation and humanity and things that are so inspiring. Like, there's people that are just doing these great things, whether it's like innovating some business or cleaning up their local park or starting some like fun festival in their neighborhood or just being good neighbors. And it's right there local, but it's not going to be on the news. It's not going to be the thing that everybody's arguing about online. But it's the real thing, that it's like your real experience of life, that when you're on your deathbed, that's really going to be what carries you into your afterlife, into the last moments, and you can reflect and think, "I like the life I lived." And I think that gets so lost. So, I mean, New Hampshire is sounding very, very good to me. It's been sounding good, but, like, now you're really selling me as, like,
Good,
"Damn it,
good.
I gotta move."
Yeah, like, I think, the key to a good life is obviously, um, I don't know, like, I feel like, family is a part of that, but, um, it's not always, a place. People say, a house is not
Yeah,
a home, and that's true. You can have a home, anywhere. Some people will tell
right.
their partners, "My home is just wherever you are," right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think that, like, finding home is the key to happiness. You can have all the money in the world, you can have none at all, but if you're home, you can be happy, and, yeah, everyone's gonna hate their job sometimes, but, the politics, when it comes down to it, um, they just can't handle these uncomfortable truths. That's what it is.
Yeah,
They just can't
100%. I
take it.
mean, 100%. Like, listen, the uncomfortable truths are so much more deep and mysterious and important than the discourse can ever take. And it's just like, it's why I'm fine with my little corner of the internet. And, I've been like in the bigger leagues of things. Like, I've been around people who are, lots of followers and like do the podcasts, big podcasts like Rogan and whatever, and they're doing all these things. And I just like, it's a stereotype, but like a lot of it reminds me so much of Hollywood. Like, I lived in LA for a few years, and I know people in that world, and it's a stereotype how, like, Hollywood is like, "Oh, yeah, this is so glamorous, and everybody is, like, famous and rich, and oh my god, wouldn't everybody just love that?" And, like, then they kill themselves the next day, and you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that person killed themselves." Like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that they were doing all these terrible things behind closed doors." And it's like, "Oh, of course, actually," because it's like some of the people who are most desperate for this external validation and the things that drive us to be, like, in the limelight in destructive ways
Yeah.
are destructive.
Well, I was,
And
like, a touring
I've just seen
musician
so much of
for
that.
over a
Oh,
decade, and, like, I've had a lot of, like, friends of mine that were musicians that took their own life, and they're
Oh, that's
people who
terrible.
generally seemed pretty happy for the most part.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, when you're, like, a full-time touring artist or a
Mhm.
band, that's a very unhealthy lifestyle. You eat nothing but junk
Yeah.
food. You are not sleeping. You're absolutely exhausted. The
Mm.
venues just completely load you up with as much free booze as you can possibly have,
Mhm.
as a sometimes as even a form of payment. Um,
Mm.
it's not a healthy lifestyle. And unless you take care of yourself, you can fall into a deep, depressing, very dark hole. I found myself in that at one point. I had to give up
Mm.
alcohol for several years when I was
Wow.
touring. But it's this happens to everyone, and I think that some of it does come down to what you put into your body and taking care of yourself. Um, but you really never know what's going on inside somebody because it's
Yeah.
up to each person to take care of themselves. So, like someone could be totally acting happy one day, total
Yeah.
fake, charade. and then the next
Right.
day they're gone. So
I know, yeah. It's incredible. I mean, and it's the thing, it's like, I think in some sense we've gotten so away from just like the focusing on the human condition. I'm actually like the other day I was really just like struck by this idea. I was like, what was going on in the early 2000s, like indie movie moment? Like when we had Garden State and that band The Shins, and like there was like a radio, everybody loved Radiohead. Like what was going on in that like indie sleaze era? There was something there that was so like, it felt sincere but melancholy but not nihilistic, and so I started looking into it, and I was just like, I think that, um, ever since I honestly, I'm like really a social media negative person. Like I really think it's been like so bad for all of society, and like every time I start on some other topic, I end up bringing it back, and I'm like, I think social media is the problem, but in reality, it's like. You would have these movies like even so recently as like the early 2000s that were grappling with like these really deep philosophical ideas. They can seem like they're kind of like not so deep or whatever, like Garden State might not strike people as like particularly deep, but I was like, I rewatched it and I was trying to like pick out threads because I thought, I bet there's actually more here than I accounted for at the time because I was much younger and I didn't know enough stuff. And I started to realize like, oh, there's so much of this is linked to like way older philosophy, like Albert Camus' absurdism and like the idea of individuation from Carl Jung and like these much more deep ideas than might be on the surface of the movie itself. And as I've thought like so much about how politics seems to just like take over our culture to the point that I have friends who, like they're not really political. They're not in the political world like I am. They don't do political work. They're just like totally in a different world. And every now and then they'll be like, did you see that thing? What do you think about that thing? What's going on over there? Like it's like nobody can escape it because even if your social media feeds are just like all about fitness or whatever it is, slips in eventually and you're like, well, what is going on? Is everything okay? And of course, we have this like propensity to feel like everything is not okay. Everything is the worst it's ever been, and everything is only going to get worse, like we were talking about. And in some sense, I feel like we really like through having this like national culture, and I think that's ultimately like the contradiction or the tension between what we talk about with the Free State Project and like localism and agorism, and then like what we see in this kind of like national conflict of political culture is just like two different paths. And I think it's my theory that social media has ultimately led to the like formation of a national culture, which is of course insane and fake. Like I don't believe that there is such a thing as national culture because people in California are so different from people in Minnesota, are so different from people in Texas, are so different from people in Virginia, are so different from people in New York. Like the idea that we really share all some kind of like cohesive culture, I think is not really a strong argument. But because of social media, we're all able to be communicating and kind of like pseudo experiencing the same things, of course, from very different angles, which has its own horrible implications because we literally are like in silos who are discussing the same thing from completely different angles. Then, yeah, yeah, in the worst way. Yeah, in the worst way. Like little clips and little posts and whatever.
it's so
And so,
weird,
like,
like in our little like more kind of libertarian sphere, the people we follow and all
mm-hmm.
that. You could see people that agree on 95% of everything.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it's really you don't see original arguments on a lot of this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Like they don't
No, on
put
the
their own
contrary.
thing. Yeah, we
I
even
was
fall
just
into it.
talking about that. Yeah, I was talking about that with Jake because he was like he was like, "Oh, I wanna read this article that, like, such and such organization put out about property rights." And I was like, "How many times do you need to read about property rights? If there is anybody that knows everything about property rights, it's you. Why would you possibly need to read another article about property rights?" And I was like he was like, yeah, I just kinda wanna see what they're saying, but it is kind of like the same thing, And in a sense, like, that is the strategy, right? It's just like, it's frequency, so that another article about property rights goes out. So maybe this time another person will see the article and then realize, oh, property rights are good or whatever. And so, like, but it does create this like really degraded, and this is like another theory that I have that I've been kind of like wanting to write something about. Is just like that we don't actually have an intellectual culture anymore, because like pre-social media, you had enough distance and you had enough like of a mainstream culture that, like, if a movie came out, everybody was kind of looking at that movie if it was a big enough movie, you know, like, so we were kind of experiencing culture at the same time, even though we were very different and lived in different places and had different beliefs and all these things. That was not what was the mainstream culture. We were still kind of consuming art and sports and like events and whatever at the same time, but like while in our different places. Once we've put everybody onto social media and have this like 24/7 media entertainment news cycle that you can engage with forever and like keep contributing to, it never ends. It's like hyper made us hyper aware of our differences, and like it never ends, and so you end up with this like really degraded form of intellectual culture where it's just like no one's able to go deep enough on anything to have it be like really new or profound or interesting, because so much of it is just like around, I can't believe there's this difference with those people. I can't believe these people are different in this way. And so it's just like this constant back and forth around those differences and those conflicts. Whereas I feel like we had a much deeper culture before that was more of a thing that could happen. And again, I just think that that really goes to the point of why it's so important to have your life primarily shaped and grounded in a local, real community where, like, that's your culture. And, you know, you can still consume movies and whatever and do all those things. But I think a lot of people have just like, we've allowed national drama and like national politics to become our national culture in lieu of like an actual culture, and a thing that would be like more inspiring, sustaining, fulfilling, rewarding, and all these things. And it's just like it, it is like a brain rot culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all we it's really crazy. I don't know. I don't know how even we as, people who are very pro individualism and self-sufficiency fall into it too, but we do. It's just, and um
Yeah.
it could be social media's fault, but I don't know. Well, Salome, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you so much again for joining me. And if you could just share where people can find your stuff, find you on Twitter, check out the Black Sheep and all this stuff, that would be great. And then I'll throw you backstage afterwards and we'll talk in a minute.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. So people can find me at Salomé Sibonex on Instagram, on X, and my Substack is wetheblacksheep.com. And that's basically it. I'm trying to keep it simple.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for coming on. And yeah, we'll talk in just a moment. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Yeah. Thanks again for listening tonight. I hope you guys thought the conversation was thought provoking and, encourage you, if nothing else, to just speak your uncomfortable truth. Who cares what other people think, what they say? Just try to be like an individual. Try not to get sucked into the echo chamber like everybody else does. And, if you see everyone just kind of like bouncing the same ideas around, try to just throw something new out there. See if it hits. Maybe a lot of people like it. I don't know. And do what you're best at. And that's your best contribution to society. So, anyways, not trying to be a preacher here. I hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Skipping next week. Got a little bit going on. But yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks with Carrie Wedler. So, yeah, have a great night. Bye. Coming from the road,
Sleeping, not